what's up? Welcome in. Wes Mitchell here, Chris Clark. Wednesday episode of the show, GC Live. Got a lot planned for you here today. And before we start, as I promised, every single show now, at least once, I don't want to forget. Football! We're talking some football. He's Chris. I'm Wes. Chris, I was really excited for you to debut the new background. And I guess you're just going to make everybody wait on you to
it's piece by piece.
Assemble it piece by piece. So by kickoff 2021, a little bit later on, Chris may finally have the full background ready to roll. Welcome in again, everybody in the chat. What's up? Hope you're doing well. And as Tyler points out, Chris got a haircut as well. Dude, I rarely, most of the time with the show, we just sort of talk about whatever is on our brains, and then there's generally one big, maybe major topic to talk about. But today, I actually made notes because there is a lot of stuff for us to hit. Football Pro Day going on literally right now as we're doing the show. So, that is a little bit iffy for us when you do a show that is both a live show and a recorded show going on the podcast. So we're going to try to be careful. We probably will get information, hopefully, as this goes on that we will provide. But I don't want to make it to where the show is completely outdated before it even goes up on the podcast platform. But we will go into Pro Day talking about some of the South Carolina Gamecocks that are participating in that right now, while we're live or while we recorded, depending on which way you watch or listen. Of course, we'll talk a little bit of spring practice. I'm sure we'll probably talk that every day, every show during spring practice. Talk a little bit of recruiting. South Carolina starting to set official visits for the summer. That's something we had anticipated, but now is actually happening. Shane Beamer will speak on Thursday. So by the time we do the show on Friday, you'll actually have another update from your head coach. Women's basketball, a 59-42 win over Oregon State on Tuesday night. Aaliyah Boston, another 19 points. She leads the way for the Gamecocks again. South Carolina advances to the Sweet 16 for the seventh time in a row, at least the seventh time that there, of course, was a tournament. No tournament last year, but seventh time in a row. They'll play Georgia Tech, a 5 seed. No time or date yet on that. And then baseball, getting an 8-3 win over the Citadel on Tuesday night. Will Sanders, the starter, was outstanding. Bats come alive, and a little bit of information coming from Mark Kingston on the Gamecocks pitching rotation moving forward. So we'll dive into all of that and go from here. There's been a couple of questions about the Pro Day. Unfortunately, there was a question about, are we going to be showing the Pro Day? There's a question about, is there any way to watch the Pro Day? Right now, we're obviously sitting in our offices right now. We are not allowed to go do a live. I don't believe anybody's doing live coverage of it. Still COVID protocols in place, and I guess SEC Network or NFL Network didn't pick this one up. So there will be information. There will be videos from the Pro Day later on put out by USC. And actually, if you are a Twitter person, you will see little clips here and there start to come out already from, I believe there's some maybe more national media type folks, some NFL Network folks. And I've been following James Palmer from, where are you from, James? You're the national correspondent for the NFL Network, James Palmer TV on Twitter. And so far, no surprise here, Chris. I sort of wanted to sort of roll into some of these guys anyway. And as we're going on the air here, J.C. Horn has been very impressive so far. Hopefully we have a 40-yard dash for you for J.C. before it's over. But a 41.5-inch unofficial, I think, vertical, but still that number will probably hold. 11 foot and an inch broad jump. Let's see, I believe measured in slightly over 6 feet. 205 pounds. J.C. Horn, he believes he is the best defensive player in this draft, is what he told us all on Tuesday. Hit 19 reps on the bench, as Reed informs us. And I don't know, man. When I look at J.C. Horn, I don't really see any flaws in the game. Like, to me, this is a kid from the moment he has stepped foot on campus, and we have talked about this before, he has carried himself like someone who is preparing for his job, right? Like, it hasn't been, let me get to South Carolina, let me enjoy being a freshman, let me go goof off. It's been a professional approach. He's looked like a professional athlete from the second he's gotten here. Big kid, long arms, muscular, can move. We all see just the natural coverage ability. 41.5-inch vertical, which again is a sign of explosiveness and athleticism. I gotta think, man, if you are in, I will say, the mid part of the first round and you need a cornerback, I don't know that you can miss with J.C. Horn. You know, I think a lot of, and I'm not some NFL expert by any means, but just seeing him work for the better part of 3 years now, I think a lot of drafting, you know, if you're a team, is about minimizing risk. And to me, I don't see much risk in taking J.C. Horn.
Yeah, and I think even back to when we saw JC in high school, Wes, he was pretty highly rated at the time, and I think he ended up moving up even more. But we saw him in a camp setting and just thought he was really, really good, and he looked like a pro. I mean, he was a kid who was, you know, close to 6'1", had a frame that could put on more weight, could move, was super athletic, had just natural cover skills. And so he was a guy that looked like a safe bet to be a really, really good college player and a future pro. And he certainly turned out that way. And I think when you look at J.C. Horn, you're right. There aren't many things, there aren't many holes in the game. You know, you can nitpick a few things here and there, maybe based on game tape, but then you think about some of the players that he's gone up against, right? Kyle Pitts from Florida, who might be a top 5 pick, has made a lot of people look silly. Did he make a play against J.C. Horn here and there? Yeah, he did, but that's what great players do, you know, against defensive backs. It's a tough spot to play. And I saw something, I can't properly credit, but on social media, somebody had put up sort of some different screenshots of JC from game tape and some of the different type guys that he was tasked with covering. And it was, you know, one game he's covering Kyle Pitts. Another game he's covering the outside receiver with side. Another game he's tasked with covering the slot guy. And so he was someone that you could put on the best player on the other team, and he was going to win for you a lot of the time. And whether it's size or his disposition, his love for the game, his athleticism, his ball skills, his just natural cover ability, he really brings all that to the field. And I think just based on some of these early returns, I think that was maybe the only question of, you know, you just wonder, is a guy for some reason going to put up maybe some subpar testing numbers? Does not appear that that's going to be the case for J.C. Horn. Again, we don't know as of right now, 2:09 p.m., recording this on Wednesday, you know, what that'll look like. But this is a guy, Wes, that has always been thought of as a potential top 2 round pick and might be doing more to solidify his status in the first part of that.
Yeah, and I actually believe I know exactly what you're talking about because I retweeted that as well. It was by Ben Fennell, NFL, at Ben Fennell _NFL. Basically, and it was, Chris, it wasn't just the positions, but the guys at those positions were the elite of the elite. Here that is, you have essentially that's Kyle Pitts at playing tight end, Elijah Moore for Ole Miss playing in the slot, and then Devonta Smith playing receiver. So, and J.C. Horn put on all those guys in various situations, and I think you know, that's what we saw South Carolina do as Horn progressed in his career, and certainly this past year at times, we saw South Carolina take more of an approach of rather than have you know, guys play particular spots within the defense, let's put J.C. Horn on the opponent's best receiver. And, we saw that in the Auburn game. Auburn kept testing him, he kept making plays. And who's the kid for Auburn? Seth Williams. There it is. And, I think there's a certain mindset that J.C. Horn comes with. And it's not just that he says he's the best player, the best defensive player in the draft. It is that he carries himself with a belief that he is the best player on every field he steps on. So I think that's obvious. And I think the kids can tell. Like, you can always, to me, I look at what do a guy's teammates say about him? And I'm not talking about when one of the media guys asks, hey, what do you tell me about your teammate? And they're going to find something nice to say, right? But to me, when you look at the respect that his teammates have had for JC just over the 3 years and how they talk about him, that says a lot. I'm telling you, if you're and I don't know anything about the Steelers' need right now, but I saw Grady Brown was in the house. Grady now an assistant in the secondary there with the Steelers. Grady, draft J.C. Horn if you have any pull there. If y'all are looking for a DB, you will thank yourself later on, I think.
And Grady Brown, man, I was actually thinking about, for some reason, something came up that made me think of Grady Brown yesterday. So, little side note, he did a really good job of getting in some talent in the Gamecocks secondary and other positions while he was on board. Now, even some guys at South Carolina did not land, not due to any fault of Grady Brown, but just at the end of the Spurrier era when some things sort of fell apart recruiting-wise. But remember, at one point had Jair Alexander committed, just a low-ranked guy out of Charlotte. Some other schools were going, why is South Carolina taking this guy? First-round pick after he went to Louisville. Mark Fields, who went to Clemson, committed at one time. Damon Arnett, who went to Ohio State. All these guys were committed to the Gamecocks, and Grady Brown had him committed at one point. But, even in addition to that, I mean, you look back at the Muschamp tenure, Chris Lamons and DJ Smith, that's probably the best safety duo that South Carolina had. Both of those guys were guys that Grady Brown helped to bring in as well. And then Sky Moore was obviously a guy that he helped get in. So he has had a pretty good eye for talent during his career. So, Wes, some of the guys, by the way, that are able to check out what J.C. Horn is doing in person today at Pro Day, Panthers head coach Matt Rule is there. This is from Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl. Bills GM Brandon Bean, Cowboys vice president of player personnel Will McClay, and then Titans head coach Mike Vrabel, and 5 other general managers from the NFL, from the Saints, Dolphins, Broncos, Packers, and Titans. Obviously, a lot of other NFL scouts there, but those are some of the big names that are there checking out J.C. Horn. And some of these other guys, Sedarius Hutcherson, man, 225, 36 times, according to Steve Fink, the outstanding Steve Fink of the Media Relations Department at South Carolina.
Well, best in the biz, Steve Fink, is what I like to call him. And now J.C. Horn locking in a 4.39 40-yard dash. Palmer, I guess, is going to be our primary reporter here on what's going on at South Carolina's deal. He says that he saw 3 different stopwatches that had a 4.39 second 40-yard dash for J.C. Horn. And, man, not a surprise there, but for him to put it down and now sort of have that locked in as well. You don't run again after you put one of those down. You just sort of go move on to the next thing. And JC, I would say, Chris, probably safe to say he is the talk of South Carolina's pro day, coming into it as well, but obviously living up to that well-deserved hype here today. So South Carolina's pro day, I'm going to give you the full rundown if I can get to it. There it is. Some guys from last year, which, again, Steve Fink reminded me, they did not have a pro day last year. So I pointed out, and I'm pretty sure this is true, guys have come back before and, stuck around and done a pro day down the road. But for these guys they never got their pro day last year. So you have, some guys on this list that could have gone through it last year, but just could not because of COVID. So Javon Charleston, the defensive back, Tavian Feaster, of course, the running back, Danny Fennell, Colin Hill, J.C. Horn, Sedarius Hutchinson, J.T. Ebay, Ernest Jones, Caleb Kinlaw, Izzy Mukwamu, Adam Prentice, Shy Smith, and former linebacker Eldridge Thompson. So that's a little bit bigger list than it maybe would have been. Let's talk about some of the other guys, Chris. And I'll say let's start with Hutcherson since we have a number there. He promised 30 reps on the bench, 225. And man, 225 pounds is, for the average human being, is a lot to bench once. So, to go out there and do it 36 times is just absolutely ridiculous. And I would say, though, probably maybe not expected. I don't know from a national or for an NFL standpoint, but I think from a local standpoint, actually probably pretty expected. We've always heard this guy is a weight room just junkie, a monster, a super strong kid, and someone that's just worked his tail off to get to where he is. I remember this tells you a little bit about Sedarius Hutcherson and his approach. So when he first got here, we talked about this before. He was listed as a 230-pound defensive end. Comes in, I think he got to South Carolina maybe at 240, 245. He says, and I remember I reported some of this as it happened. I remember sort of hearing, asking, who do I need to be looking out for? Who's been looking good in the weight room? And I heard pretty quickly after, I think, a redshirt year, watch out for the Sedarius Hutcherson kid. He's a weight room monster. Puts on weight. And his thing has always been, Coach, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? This was always the guy that they never had to, make him drink his protein shake, never had to make sure he was getting his reps in, has always just been done things the right way. Well, very early in his career, and I hope I'm getting this right, he actually had put on so much weight that he overshot his initial sort of area by like 5 pounds, which, you're like, okay, big deal. Well, Sedarius, being sort of almost a perfectionist, is just like mad at himself. He's like, all right, Coach, what do I got to do to drop these 5 pounds? Like, what do I need to do? Because he wanted to be exactly on his target weight. So I think there's a little bit of a perfectionist mindset from Sedarius Hutcherson, and he put on the weight the correct way. He maintained his mobility while putting on the weight, and probably for me, Chris, one of those guys I just pull for because he seems to have always carried himself the right way.
Yeah, man. I mean, what he did was remarkable in terms of the weight gain and transitioning from a tight end defensive end to an offensive lineman and turn it into a really good one, a draftable prospect, just a weight room warrior. And you can't do that without having the right mentality. Obviously, he's got some good genes and things like that to be able to transform his body like that. He's just got some natural strength going on, but just you've got to give him credit for putting in the time and the effort, the amount of eating that he had to do. I remember he's talked about that in some media opportunities before, but he gained, I think, in about 15 months, a year to 15 months, it was 70, 80 pounds. I mean, just an amazing, transformation with his body and moving to a new position, and so he's really thrived. There have been some times, man, where South Carolina had some names on their offensive line. You remember we've talked about this before, maybe a couple years ago, and there's some bigger names, some guys that were more highly ranked in the past that fans talked about more, but quietly, sort of behind the scenes, Hutch was the guy that a lot of times was considered in the program to be the best guy, on that team. And so he's really progressed well to where he's going to have a really good shot to get drafted. Last I heard, Wes, the projection on him probably like a mid-round type of guy. And when you get in that range, it sort of depends. You can go higher, you can go lower based on who's on the board, the needs, who's come off. but definitely a consummate professional type guy and someone that I think is going to do a really good job at the next level.
So, as far as who we talk about next, Chris, I think we all know Horn's going first, right? Like he's going to be the first guy of the South Carolina players that are going to be potentially draftable. The five guys that spoke yesterday being Tuesday in this case: Horn, Izzy McQuamu, Darius Hutcherson, obviously Ernest Jones, and Shi Smith. So those are the five that were invited to the NFL Combine, even though the NFL Combine is not really what it was because of COVID. So of that group, if Horn is first, who are you hearing could be second off the board?
And again, this is before, all the pro day numbers are going to come out and things like that. Probably Shi Smith because of the season that he had and some of the testing numbers that he's expected to put up. Shi Smith is probably going to run really well, for example. He's going to put up probably some eye-popping numbers in terms of what he runs in the 40, shuttle metrics, things like that. I would anticipate those being very good, and he's got good game tape. You go back and look at some plays that he's made during his career, but also what he did last year when he was the target, the focus. He was able to turn in some really good performances and really helped himself. So he's someone that could be, a mid-round guy or even creep up a little bit higher potentially, depending on need and just what teams think of him.
I'm very curious. Hopefully we have this answer, Chris, by the time the show is over, because it's going to be an important question for Shi. It's going to be something that they look at. What does he run in the 40? What does he put down in the other measurables? Because he's not going to be the biggest guy. We already know that, but you know that going in if you're a GM. And I think Shi said Tuesday, I can play anywhere. I can play outside. I can play inside. Obviously, somebody could probably help you in the return game as well. To me, probably your sort of prototypical slot receiver. Could he do some stuff outside depending on the scheme? Yes, he does have down the field speed as well. I'll be curious to see what exactly does he run. John asked on Facebook, will Shi Smith beat Horn's time of 4.39? I don't know, John. I really I will say maybe. Chris, do you have a definitive answer? Do you have a prediction? I don't know what Shi has run. That's the one thing I've never asked anyone exactly what Shi Smith runs. I think Shi actually was asked about that yesterday, and his answer was right around this number. I think 4.39, 4.4, 4.41. I don't know what the expectation is. I know what my eyes tell me. I know he's plenty fast. Yeah. Maybe a step faster than Horn.
Yeah, I'm gonna give my my answer that I haven't given in a while. It will be close, I think, between those two. I don't think one would blow the other away. I would, if I had to take a stab at it, Wes, I would say Shi beats that time. And keep in mind, these are watch times, right? For JC Horn at 4.39. So I think Shi Smith, in terms of a watch time, a handheld, I think he beats that narrowly, not by a lot, but I think he could certainly get there. Maybe a touch, like you said, a touch faster. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's low 4.4s, something like that. But I do think Shi is going to turn in a really good time running, just based on what we knew from high school with what he ran, looking at the game tape, all those different types of things. I think that's going to be one of his stronger areas.
Gamecock Rush says a 4.389, so just barely. I was going to say a 4.37 and 4.38, but we'll see. And sometimes it just depends on, the day. It depends on who's pushing the button too. So we'll see. Will be interesting. But I think our eyes tell us that Shi very quick, and I think Shi's Shi has always walked that line. We've discussed this on the show before with Shi as a current player, not necessarily as a prospect, but the attitude. And he said that Debo, has even talked to him about sort of working on his attitude. This was Shi's words, not mine. But, I think, Chris, you and I have talked about this as well. There is a positive that comes from playing with that chip on your shoulder. And I would take Shi Smith 100 out of 100 times over somebody that's a little more just laid back, doesn't really care, can take it or leave it, doesn't care about the results. Give me Shi Smith every single time. And I think Shi made some believers based on his junior year performance, in that we knew he was the top target for the offense. I mean, let's go back. We knew Shi Smith was going to have to be the primary target for this offense in the passing game, but we didn't know that he was necessarily going to be as productive as he was. That was a question mark going into the season. So I think he answered some questions there. Like, we knew he would be solid. We wondered, will he be great? And he answered some questions without really having a lot of other consistent, targets around him. And then, I think coming back when late in the year, he didn't really have to. Nobody's forcing you to at that point. Would have been easy being banged up just to step away. Nobody's really probably even going to say anything about it. But to come back, compete, and, sort of go out, not on a positive as far as the team goes, but to go out there and try to go make some plays for your team. I think Shi helped himself a ton this year. You can go back. His freshman year didn't have a single drop. I saw PFF put out this thing. He didn't have a fumble his entire career. And then, goes into the Senior Bowl, by the way. We didn't even mention that. Had an outstanding time at the Senior Bowl. Well, that's sort of a common trend the last few years for South Carolina guys to go to the Senior Bowl and help their stock. Hopefully, for Shi's sake, he can sort of finish that off by having a good day at the pro day. And if he does that, I think he's probably checking some boxes for teams.
Yeah, and I had somebody sort of NFL scout type connections tell me a while back, this is well before pro day and all that, based on the year that he put together, if he tested like people thought he could test, that a second round type of draft grade for Shi Smith was very possible. And so it'll be very interesting to watch it. And I agree with you, Wes. I mean, I thought it was, not to pick on some people, but at the end of last year when South Carolina had some opt-outs and stuff like that, you would have that, and some of the same people also saying, why is Shi Smith talking so much on the field and things like that. And it's like, well, I mean, this is a guy who really cares. And so he's someone that definitely brought almost a defensive mentality, to the receiver position, and always played bigger than his size too. So I thought it was, did you need to get Shi to settle down a little bit at times? Sure. But I think that's something that if you're under control, that's a trait that some teams might see as a positive. Wes, a little bit more, just saw a couple other things if we can come across on J.C. Horn. And Jim Nagy, who I mentioned earlier with the Senior Bowl, actually said that two different NFL scouts actually had, one of them had a 4.39 and one actually had a 4.37. So a little bit even better for J.C. Horn, and did not run a second 40 because that one was obviously just fine for him for his purposes. A few other things. Matt Miller at NFL Draft Scout on Twitter, a lot of you guys will know him. He says that the cornerback one race might be heating up. Patrick Surtain of Bama, who's another excellent player from the SEC, has widely been considered maybe the first guy off the board. He said it's heating up a little bit now. And side-by-side comparison, J.C. Horn running a 4.39 versus Surtain's 4.46. Got him by 2.5 inches on the vertical. Broad jump 2 more inches and 1 more bench rep at 225. Patrick Surtain a couple inches taller, 3 pounds heavier. So, and Bruce Feldman of The Athletic said that he wrote a piece actually with some thoughts on J.C. Horn from SEC coaches. And the quote that he has on Twitter, he's got it all, has the speed, tough, good on the ball, good off the ball, very competitive, the best DB we faced. Nobody had a good day on that guy. So lots of love coming out from J.C. Horn right now. And I think, Wes, this isn't a deal where like everybody in the country, everybody who saw, followed the SEC, like everybody knew J.C. Horn was good. This isn't a deal where he's coming out of nowhere, but it reminds me a little bit of Deebo Samuel, where testing comes around and everybody goes, oh, this guy's like really good and really athletic. And we're going, yeah, we've seen this our whole, the whole time we've covered the program. So yeah, he's been highly regarded, but it looks like it's taken a step even further up now for J.C. Horn.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, it's kind of one of those things where, yes, you can have sometimes there's like more of a homer element where it's like, you're naturally, guys are going to get talked up by the people who see them all the time, whether it's fans certainly are going to have a little biased view. Media can as well, I'll readily admit that. But with JC, it's almost like there's never really been a question. Like JC came in with hype and it was like instantly,
yep,
this guy, JC, some guys, when you see them week in, week out, you almost see them exposed a little bit, like if you're on the outside looking in, you're not covering South Carolina or a fan of South Carolina, you maybe are only seeing the highlights. You maybe are only like, Patrick Surtain, I've heard a lot about him. I've seen him play, on TV sometimes, but I'm not following like the day-to-day, week-to-week, every single game. But some guys get better by you seeing them every week because you just see how consistent they are. Even some really, really good cornerbacks from time to time will have a game where they get exposed by they just meet that dude. They just meet the wrong guy.
Right.
I don't ever remember J.C. Horn having that day where you say, he just met the wrong guy today. Normally, J.C. was the wrong guy the receiver did not want to meet. So no surprise, as you said. And he, as long as he's healthy, man, that guy's going to be in the league for years to come. And I don't really think that's us being homers or us like giving the benefit to a guy that we've seen a lot, or giving the benefit to someone, we interviewed in high school and just like as a person. I just think that's the truth.
Yeah.
So
no, I totally agree, man. And, there are some, like I said earlier, you can nitpick against any player in the country. I mean, there's nobody that plays at a high level of college football where you can't go find some plays and say, well, this guy got beat there, this and that. I mean, you think of, Kyle Pitts. I remember playing the Florida game. J.C. Horn had perfect coverage. Kyle Pitts makes a catch. That's what Kyle Pitts does. He's also going to be a first-round pick. That's what happens. Elijah Moore, one of the best receivers in the country, who whipped everybody he played at any level, any team that they played. Elijah Moore got open. He was prolific. There were a few plays where I think he caught a touchdown on J.C. Horn. Maybe they were supposed to switch it or something. Izzy and J.C., I remember that play. But there's just not many. Even Seth Williams, that game where J.C. Horn was dominant, Wes, just ruined Auburn's day. Wrecked shop. Seth Williams caught a deep ball in J.C. Horn. They had perfect coverage on Seth Williams, who was a really good player at Auburn. Went up, just snagged it from him, made the play. J.C. Horn's a guy that anybody in the country would take as their first cornerback. Maybe if you're Bama, he's number 2, probably number 1 even for them. And so that's why he's going to be, I think, a really high pick with, like you said, a chance to stick around the league a really, really long time.
Who else? You want to go into somebody else, Chris? Anybody else you want to hit on? Any thoughts?
Well, the one that I'm really, really interested by is Ernest Jones. That's one where I'm really curious where he may go. He's a little bit more, I think, in that gray area. Where does he test, or what does he test? What are the thoughts on him? Obviously, I think some people were maybe surprised when he went ahead and made the decision to jump early, but he did have a good year. He's a guy that's really sharp, really smart, and was very productive on the field. But, I think just from what I've gathered, there's some questions there about where he may go. He could, if he tests well, get up in that mid-round range, but it could also be lower. It just depends. Izzy McQuamu is obviously a guy that is sort of hard to peg as well, Wes, because there's obviously some plays where there's some almost sort of some freakishly athletic plays. You think about some of the interceptions that he made, but there's also some inconsistencies on tape. There's some positional questions. What is he going to run? And so I think those are some things to look out for. And just there are a few guys, I think, on the board in this draft class where you're not quite sure, where they may go. You got a good sense that J.C. Horn's going. I mean, it'd be a surprise at this point if he dropped out of the first round, right? It would be a surprise. Shi Smith's going to go. He's probably going to be that next guy, you would think. Beyond that, then you start getting into some gray area and some questions.
Yeah, and Chris, with Ernest, and I'm trying to say this the right way because it's kind of like, all right, well, if you say how is Ernest Jones going to match up speed wise and athletically in the NFL, in today's headline grabbing world, that's kind of like, well, you're not questioning Ernest Jones' athleticism compared to the average human being. You're really talking about how does it compare to what you have to be a star linebacker, to be like a starting linebacker in the NFL. And I think that's what the teams will be looking for him to prove, either pro day or over time once he's on the team, as far as how much he'll end up playing. And I think that part does get pointed out partially because Ernest does check all the other boxes. Leadership qualities are through. If you're going, scale of 10, it's 10 out of 10. I think instincts are there. The kid's a good tackler. He has the right approach to the game. Never going to be a problem in your locker room. Actually going to be a plus guy in your locker room. Is going to grab other guys and pull them forward with him. All the other things are there. With him, I think it's just about can he show he can keep up? How much coverage are you asking him to do in your scheme? How does he really fit into what you're requiring of that? And this is another kid in this program that I think you pull for. I know you made the long trek. I'm sure you remember Ernest announcing for South Carolina, and this was a kid that was considered a solid pickup, but none of us knew. I think, Chris, for a lot of these like mid 3-star guys, some of them turn out, some of them don't, and you didn't really know exactly how good he was going to be necessarily. You knew he had a chance, so it's been fun to watch him grow. It's been fun to sort of get to know him a little bit because he kind of became the spokesman for this defense the last couple of years. So I think he will bring those qualities, and we'll see. I don't know what he needs to run today or what they're going to need to see in like a shuttle situation or what exactly teams will be looking at when they're trying to sort of quantify it. But will be interesting to see the response and what teams are saying after pro day compared to before.
Yeah, I mean, he's a high football IQ guy. He generally was in a good position for the Gamecocks, was able to get them in good looks defensively and set those things. Put a lot, in Will Muschamp's scheme on, the Mike linebacker as well, which is the position that he played. So, yeah, the one thing you could tell with Ernest during sort of the recruiting process and just meeting him in person, getting to know him, is, he knew he was a sharp guy who was going to do things the right way, and that does give you a shot. I mean, there are some guys, Wes, I know that we've encountered over the years where even if you are a little bit more sold on them athletically, you wonder about their disposition or their work ethic and things like that. And you never worried about that with him and knew that was going to give him a chance to be a solid guy. And he turned out to be even more than that, turned out to be a really good player and a good find for the Gamecocks. So someone that's certainly going to have a chance. And I would think should get drafted, but again, we'll have to see how the testing portion plays out. And then obviously draft day can be somewhat of a crapshoot unless you're a top round guy, then it starts getting into those gray areas.
Maybe all these guys will just get drafted by the 49ers, Chris. I mean, that seems to be the trend, right?
That's right.
Okay, let's hit a little bit of recruiting. I teased it at the beginning, and what we're seeing now, Chris, is that South Carolina and other schools, really, this isn't unique to them, but everybody, for the most part, starting to get ready for summer official visits. And, this is something that's highly anticipated, that we're actually going to be able to see kids get to take some trips again, take some unofficial visits, take some official visits. And South Carolina, we find out, I guess that was on Tuesday, that Oscar Delp, the big time tight end, actually Oscar Delp has been on our show. So if you didn't catch that, you can go back, go to youtube.com/Gamecock Central, and you can see see when he was on and chatted with us a little bit and talked a little bit about the recruiting process. But Chris, a guy that obviously has become a huge target for South Carolina, and Eric Kimry, heavily involved here. Shane Beamer, heavily involved here. A number of schools are on sort of this bigger list that Delp has put out. I think, you look South Carolina, Georgia, maybe Clemson. Maybe there's another school or two in there, but those are the ones that seem to, at least from our perspective, have the most traction. And I don't think necessarily we'd call South Carolina the behind-the-scenes favorite, if we're being accurate. I think Georgia's going to have a lot going for it till the very end. But getting him on campus and having a shot to show him everything you got for an official visit, I would say at this point, South Carolina would take that. I think they would take their current position and say, if you told them, hey, you're going to get a shot to get him on campus and show him what you're all about, I think they would take their current position.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to have a sort of I'll overuse my phrase again, sort of the seat at the table is what you want to have. And they've had that, with Delp for a while. There were some obvious connections, but that's not the only thing you got to have here. With some of the family connections to South Carolina and Columbia, the competition's tremendous for Delp, and Gamecocks have done a great job, this staff has, of tapping into that and making them feel wanted and showing them some of the uniqueness of South Carolina. And so obviously, like you said, Georgia, there's going to be connections. There's going to be, geography, and in-state kid. There's going to be a lot there. Like you said, Wes, I think it's a great way to put it. They've got a lot going for them as well. Clemson's got some family connections. They'll do a good job recruiting as well, and probably land, may have a chance to land a visit from him at some point this summer. Michigan, Florida, there's some others that he may go see, but I think those first three with South Carolina, Georgia, Clemson, those are probably, I think, Wes, going to be the main ones to watch going forward. But South Carolina definitely got a shot, definitely heavily in this one.
Yeah, and I was about to say, who else do you think could get into it? But you answered it, and if you sort of line up the things that Delp says he's looking for, and then what those teams and schools can provide, it sort of matches up and it sort of makes sense. So we'll see what happens there. But obviously, someone that Carolina believes could come in and play early, and I think that they probably believe they could really feature in this offense. I think we've heard enough about what they want to do with the tight ends and how they want that to be a big part of their offense that clearly would be a nice fit for the Gamecocks, and they're trying to convince him, obviously what a nice fit he would be as well. Switching over to another guy, and I can't, for whatever reason, find some film to throw on for this kid for y'all to watch, but we'll talk about him anyway. Chris, that being Nick James, who is actually at IMG Academy right now. He's originally from the state of Alabama, I believe, 4-star kid, had put out a top 12, I believe, of schools earlier. South Carolina obviously made the cut. He has set his official visit weekend for January 25th as well. And I don't even know if I said the date for Delp, but it is that January 25th weekend, which is already starting to set up to be an intriguing weekend for South Carolina. What can you tell Gamecock fans about Big Nick James?
Yeah, so same weekend as Delp there in June, and he's a guy that's originally from Prattville, Alabama. Alabama's offered. I think Auburn's offered. I think both those schools in that top 12 that you referenced, Wes, and big competition. I mean, Nick James is a guy that defensive line coach Jimmy Lindsey and the defensive staff identified early on as a guy that they really wanted to go take a swing at. And they're taking some big swings. I mean, no doubt about it on some of the players on their board on the interior. And he's one. I mean, one of the top rated tackles in the country. Originally from Alabama, like I said, plays at IMG now. And so here's the thing for South Carolina. Are they going to be able to beat, some of these big name programs? I mean, he's got a lot of schools after him with logos, tradition. I've heard Oregon's going to be a big player in it. Alabama, Auburn, several others are certainly going to be in the mix here. But he's got a really good relationship with the staff already. South Carolina is doing a really good job of recruiting Nick James. And he was a guy that we had heard that the staff wanted to try to get in this summer for an official visits. Again, we've talked about this, Wes. This summer is critical for South Carolina. We'll see what evaluation opportunities look like in terms of camps and stuff. But just being able to get some of these guys on campus that have never visited, that have never met the new coaching staff face-to-face, maybe don't know much about South Carolina in general, to have a chance to get them on campus is big. And so that's going to be the case for Nick James and some others. And so I think it's where it goes, we don't know, but you want to have an opportunity to get a guy on campus for an official visit. I think it's big news. Now, does that mean South Carolina lands him? We have no idea. But to be able to get one of those sort of precious official visit slots, certainly a positive development for them.
Yeah, and Travis is saying June. Did I say July? I don't know.
You said January.
I said January. Wow.
Oh, good.
Okay. That's I'm worse than you, Chris. Chris will mess up some dates in a second, but I'll mess up the month. Yeah. I don't know why. So obviously not January. June 25th. Official visit weekends. And if you're a film junkie or one of those people that just likes to look this stuff up, I did find his film. It's under Dominic. So Dominic James on Huddle. And wow. Any thoughts on this kid? He is a Rivals 250, 4-star. I think he's number 222 in the country right now, according to Rivals. Yeah, dude's pretty active in there, man.
Yeah, big bodied, big frame kid who's got quickness. And, one of the things that has become really at a premium in college football now is, ability to rush from the interior, interior pass rush. It used to be more of edge guys, which are still obviously very important. But if you can find a defensive tackle who has the ability to push the pocket and make some things happen inside. We saw that from Javon Kinlaw at South Carolina. That's what he parlayed into a first-round pick, type of ability at South Carolina. He was extremely disruptive. And so, Nick James is someone that you look, and obviously not a finished product at this level, but he flashes that ability to give you some interior pass rush. And so big offer list, Wes, and a guy that's got some talent for sure.
No doubt, man. All right, so let's turn the page a little bit and talk about our final two topics for the day. We only got actually about 11 minutes left in the show. Let me get our banners back up. And Chris, women's basketball, 59-42 win over Oregon State. Aaliyah Boston, we talked about this on Monday. She's just taken the game to another level, I feel like. She has 19 points. She's led the way both games so far, had a double-double in the round one win. And this game was close early on, man. I don't know how much of it you got to sit down and watch. I watched most of it. And I think it was a 1-point game at the end of the first quarter. And then South Carolina maybe went on a stretch where they outscored Oregon State. I think it was like 40-something to around 15 or so for the next stretch after that. So to me, this game was not even – as it went on, it wasn't even as close as it ended. It was a fairly dominant performance for South Carolina, who actually did not shoot very well from outside. They didn't hit a lot of three-pointers. I think they only hit one, but still just were dominant inside, played really good defense. Oregon State is a team coming in that, other than a loss to Stanford, had been on a little stretch of their own where they had played really well and won a lot of games and was statistically a really good shooting basketball team. And South Carolina, you could tell, had emphasized defense going into this game, locked them down. and made enough plays to sort of pull away mid second quarter and on, and I felt like cruised through the fourth quarter. So your thoughts from what you saw in the game?
Yeah, it was a little bit similar to that Mercer game in round one where South Carolina, other team hit some shots. I think you're right, Russ. One of their sharpshooter on Oregon State, I think, is 50% for threes on the year or something absurd. So they do have some shooters. They had some bigs. And so for South Carolina, a little bit of a sloppier start. Oregon State hit some shots, whether outside, inside. South Carolina a little bit slower going. Like you said, struggled from outside. But what it came down to was, again, similar to the Mercer game in round one, the ability to dominate inside with Aaliyah Boston, Bree Beal doing a great job on the boards again. Actually, she hit the three from the top of the key at one point, I remember. And at one point, that was her only 3 points of the game. Not sure if it finished that way, but Letitia Ame here did a great job. I thought she was a pivotal part of that game in sort of turning things around, helping South Carolina go on some of those runs. Defensively, she did a really good job. Active hands, had a steal and a layup, I remember. Did a really good job inside. And so it was pretty clear that part of the strategy was with LA and with Aaliyah Boston to get Oregon State's bigs in some foul trouble, which they did, even early on in that game, and that affected everything.
And LA, from compared to the beginning of the year to now, I think she's really started to find herself and get settled in and build her confidence and stuff like that. So it will be fun to see how far this team can keep it going. Georgia Tech, a 5 seed, coming up next. As of this live show, I don't believe the game time or day has been announced yet. Can't tell you much about Georgia Tech at this point, but I can tell you that Chris Wellbaum, who I believe does as good a job as anybody covering women's basketball at South Carolina, will have a full preview and breakdown for you heading into that game. 7 straight Sweet 16 appearances. I don't care what you're doing, man. I don't care what sport, what level, what game. If you make it to that level 7 years in a row, that is the type of consistency that is just so hard to match and so hard to keep up in a sport that you have turnover, that you have people coming into your program and graduating for your program. So just another example of the many examples of why Dawn Staley is amazing and is the best. So baseball, South Carolina actually played. Both these games were going on at the exact same time last night, the women's basketball game and the baseball game. An example, man, of how baseball is one of those games where when it's going bad, nothing goes right for you. And then when you're feeling good, it's like, I don't know, it's a snowball effect, and it can be a positive snowball or it can be a negative snowball. South Carolina jumps all over the Citadel early on Tuesday night, sort of keeps it going, cruises to the end, an 8-3 victory. Really probably could have been more. They had already sort of put the game away early on. So I'll start with the bats, man. It is funny to me how things get going on Sunday. You wonder, can they build off that? And they come right back out and swing the bats really well, have some really nice at-bats. And, dude, this sets up what is now all of a sudden a massive home SEC series with Florida this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we've been talking about, with the competition when it stiffens for South Carolina. Obviously, the Texas series, which was the first big test, aside from Clemson, did not go like South Carolina wanted. The Vandy series, while a disappointment, dropping 2 of 3, getting no hit in the second one. Wes, I look at that one, and I mean, you win game 3 in comeback fashion. Game 2 is not a good one, obviously. But game 1, you're facing Kumar Rocker, and you lose by 1 run on the road against a really, really good team. I don't think it's a season-defining type of series. And so it's much more about where you go from here. And so the team has turned it around, in terms of both pitching and offensively. They put together some better at-bats. Now the competition's going to turn around a lot more, again, when Florida comes to town. Watching the game last night, Wes, the top 5 teams in the country right now, all from the SEC, and I think all right on South Carolina's schedule this year. So going to be extremely difficult starting with Florida. So Kingston shaking up the pitching rotation a little bit on Sunday. But the Gamecocks did put together, I think, had a good approach at the plate. Wes Clark, another homer. Jeff Heinrich with a big, I think, a 2-strike, or at least 2 out, maybe both. Double that cleared the bases in that game. That was certainly a big moment as well. And the pitching did well. So going to be a big test at home, and one that South Carolina would love to walk away as a series winner.
Yeah, it should be fun. And, man, Will Sanders, outstanding. And this is a guy that has been very highly thought of, really from the second he signed with South Carolina. He was really good with the Blowfish this past offseason heading into this year. And, I think you look at Sanders, and I do wonder, so going into this weekend, Kingston has announced that South Carolina will go with their usual, Thomas Farr, Brandon Jordan on Saturday, to be determined on Sunday. Now, that could be the obvious, which would maybe be Brett Carey, who was so good and really, not single-handedly won that game, but obviously was a huge part in South Carolina winning the game Sunday against Vanderbilt, kept them in the game. Would that make sense to roll with him Sunday? Absolutely. I did notice, so the game Tuesday was on SEC Network, not the Network Plus. It was the big boy SEC Network. And they mentioned the possibility of Will Sanders transitioning over to being the Sunday guy. And that I wondered, was that just a fleeting thought, or was that from a conversation, in the building? We know that the analysts and the play-by-play guys get to chat with the coaching staffs of the games that they're about to do. So I wondered, okay, was that maybe a little hint at what could be to come, later on? So I do think long-term Sanders is going to be a weekend guy. We'll see if it's sooner or later. Certainly by next year, I think he's a weekend guy. We'll see if that happens now. And then, I think it becomes, where do you put the other pieces in? If you take Brett Carey out of the bullpen, obviously you've got to replace him with somebody. I think Andy Peters has really showed he could be a closer as far as his stuff goes. We've talked about Jack Mahoney on the show with Colin Taylor. Love his stuff and love his demeanor as well. So he, to me, feels like he has a closer's mindset. So as we know, you go into a baseball season, Chris, and you have everything probably on a board where you think how it's gonna look and how it's gonna play out, and then you adjust as it goes. Will be very interesting to see how it adjusts for South Carolina moving forward. And do you even maybe go in? Hey, do you go into Sunday and say, or do you go into the weekend saying, if we need Brett Carey to close a game on Friday or Saturday, do you go ahead and use him? And then if you don't use him, do you start him on Saturday? That would be an approach as well.
Yeah. Got some flexibility there and some options that you can feel good about, and of course, Julian Bosnick's still in the mix to where later in the season, obviously, I mean, they're looking at making a change right now, but you can always slot him back there because he's been there. And so, that's a key position. And, something else came up during the broadcast that we've seen sort of play out this year is positionally in the infield, still, some questions about how things could shake out. And so, a couple different storylines that continue to monitor there, obviously for the Gamecocks, keeping the bats going as they were at the beginning of the season. And as they've turned around a little bit in the past couple of games, keeping that going. The Friday and Saturday starting pitching has obviously been quite good. Figure out Sunday, have your bullpen that's very talented, albeit young and inexperienced in the conference sense. Having those guys to continue to progress. And this is a team that's going to face huge competition down the stretch. Again, top 5 teams in the country, all on the schedule. One of them in Florida set to come to town.
Yeah. By the way, to me, Braylon Wimmer, in my biased opinion, is the best player on this team. Like I think the guy, as far as everything he can do and do it at a high level, is incredible. So, and that's no offense to, a Wes Clark, a Brady Allen. And I'm talking, among the position players. It's hard to compare position to pitchers and stuff like that. But Wimmer, very, very impressive so far this year.
No doubt.
All right, y'all. So that's going to do it. We're right at 3:00 finishing up here live, whether you're joining us live, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, or on the podcast after the fact. We appreciate you. We appreciate Clint Hammond. Check him out, clinthammond.com, 803-771-6933. He is the presenting sponsor. I don't even know if I mentioned that to start the show, which is awful. Clint is our guy. He's been the presenting sponsor for about 3 months now, and we are very, very happy to have him, and we really appreciate his support for the show and making this show possible. Chris, you're a Clint fan too, right? Like you're on the Clint bandwagon.
I'm fully on it. I might even be the conductor of the Clint train.
Yeah, you could refinance your house as well, man. Save a little bit of money, and then again, as I tell everybody else, refinance your house right now. Catch these low interest rates while they're still low, and then use the money you've saved to buy a subscription to Gamecock Central, and then you will still have some left to go out and buy something for your wife and keep her happy. So you can get a subscription to Gamecock Central and still keep wifey happy, which is always the key to life, is keeping her happy. So, all right, y'all. For Chris, I'm Wes. How should I say this? You're not just joining us. It's the end of the show. But if you want more on Pro Day, is what I'm trying to say, go to GamecockCentral.com. And once all the numbers are out, once USC puts those out, we will be posting those. It'll be a free story. You won't have to be a subscriber. So go check that out, GamecockCentral.com. Until Friday, y'all have a good one. We'll see you then.